which I'm going to plug in my phone too, just in case.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey. All right, I made it.
Yeah.
I meditate every morning and in the evening, but we postponed it. Actually, it was perfect timing.
Great. So we're recording this, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna go out. We'll post it to the group at some point. I'm hoping we'll get a few people on the Zoom. I got 2 Zooms running, so you guys on the big group, and then our other sister group, the little group that we've been doing as a mutuality explorations group for a number of months. So just branching out, trying a bigger group.
Okay.
I'm gonna do a Facebook Live. I've got a production assistant here tonight with me, so yeah, that's Amanda, and she is amazing and figured out a way to use her phone to join the small group. So we'll be kind of like Siamese twinning it or something. I'm not sure exactly what. We'll figure it out. And we're just setting up the cameras here now. I'm gonna try to bring up the Facebook Live stuff.
All right.
If you want to whistle, give us a little musical interlude. I'm just kidding, man. Live video. You think we're ready for this shit? Here we go.
Oh, and do me a favor and put in your password so that I can record you.
You ready to go with everybody here? Hey, we're doing, you can't turn, it says rotate your phone. Is this going to turn out sideways?
Which one?
This one?
Oh, it will, yeah, I would go straight, I would go this way.
You want to take it sideways?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You handle that.
You got it.
Yeah, we're just getting ourselves set up. I've done a couple of things where I've done a live Facebook and a recorded video a couple of times, which was really challenging.
Sorry.
What do you want to do? Hold it?
The only thing is I just have to unplug it so we can.
Yeah, go ahead.
It does turn. Okay, so we can unplug it and we can.
Yeah. Wow. Cinematography.
Amazing.
Good to see you guys here. Yeah, we got a few folks. I'm not real good about, I've got 4 computer screens in front of me guys right now. So I've got 2 Zooms running. I've got a standard recording off my iPad, and then I've got my iPhone doing our live. So I'm not gonna get to maybe some of the comments. I've got Amanda watching my small group, and she's gonna be trying to get the
And currently it's just Cal, so we're good on
here. Yeah, we'll see if they boot on, come online here pretty soon, and then we'll get started. Yeah, it's kind of it's a beautiful evening here in Fort Lauderdale. It's about 75, 76 degrees. Fairly clear skies. It's been blowing a norther for a couple of days, so it kind of was a cool down for the last couple of days. Clear weather. It's not supposed to be any rain tonight. Keep our fingers crossed, no rain. Yeah, we're just doing a little
Is that just 2 of us on the call?
It's probably just 2 of us. There's probably more people just going to hit the live now that I said I'm going to do a live. But it doesn't matter, man. It's just it's cool to have just a couple of people, because what happens sometimes is the back and forth is more energetic, you know. So if
Yeah.
you wind up with unless I'm not admitting people to the room, shit. Is there a waiting room?
No, there's no.
Oh, we took.
I was able to just pipeline.
Yeah, I took the waiting room
Oh,
off for
hi.
this one.
Just so you know, we're actually doing 2 Zoom meetings right now. So
Hey.
you're the host of this Zoom meeting, and he's the host of his Zoom meeting on this phone
Yeah,
or on the computer.
that's Amanda. That's
Hi.
my production assistant.
Hi, Cal, right?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
So we'll give it a few minutes, see who else maybe jumps in. What time are we looking at here?
7:31.
Oh, 7:31. Okay, we can give it a few minutes. Just to shoot the shit for a while. I'll tell you about Amanda. She is a rock star event person I met while doing stand-up comedy in the last couple of weeks. We've been getting out. Basically, what I'm doing lately is I'm giving my littles and my middles kind of, you know, what do you want to do? Like, you want to get out there and do shit that writer doesn't normally do. And stand-up comedy was one of the things I wanted to get into pretty heavily back on my birthday. And of course, you know, with COVID, everything's been locked down. So we've actually made it out. We've gone to about 5 or 6 different open mics in the last week and a half. And we're getting a routine together. We haven't posted anything yet, but you might see something come up on BitChute. They didn't. This is the other thing. They were like, we don't want our own. You know, we don't want to cramp into the YouTube channel, because that's writers' territory. Like, writers very much kind of like explaining things in standard language and trying to be a straight up guy on YouTube. So they wanted to get a BitChute channel, because they're like, you know, the craziness is going to come out and we're going to be all wild and all over the place. So BitChute's a good option for us right now. We may go to a couple of other platforms, looking at DTube and maybe something else after a while. But yeah.
Does Vimeo offer channels?
What's that?
Vimeo.
Vimeo?
Yeah.
What about it?
Does it have like channels? I've never explored it, but you know, it's more like a general.
Oh, Vimeo.
Yeah.
I'm unfamiliar.
Yeah, I've watched stuff on Vimeo. I know it's a really great little product, and I think maybe it's like the number 3 or 4, you know, one out there. I just went YouTube because it was like, you know,
It's easier.
And what I'm finding with YouTube is it's you know, has its glitches, right? So branching out and doing another channel, the littles, I think the middles were kind of like, nah, we need our own channel, and it shouldn't be YouTube, it should be something. So
I didn't realize you do stand-ups.
what's that?
You doing stand-up comedy?
Yeah. I just got out and started doing stand-up. I took a course last fall. I've been doing improv for 2 years. So I've been doing improv since the accident, actually. When I first did my first walk into an improv lesson, I was still in an arm sling and you know, broken ribs and everything. And they're getting us to raise our hands, and I'm raising one hand, and my other hand's like sitting there in the sling, and I could hardly do anything for the first month of improv. But it was a good outlet. It was a good way to just get out and, you know, mix with people and do something new. So it kind of kept me going.
So you're pretty much a Miss Maisel of Fort Lauderdale.
The what?
Have you seen a show called Marvelous Mrs. Maisel?
No, but like, you're like the Maison. You like the who's who.
Yeah, no. I promise you, like, if you're doing stand-up comedy, it's a show. I believe it's on Amazon Prime, I think, or Netflix. I'm not sure anymore. It's been a while since I watched it, but it's hilarious. It's a 1 season though. No. I'm sorry. I think it's 2 seasons now. So it's loosely based on Joanna Reeves' character, but it's kind of a collective archetype type of character, and it's set in the 1950s, and it's hilarious.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just
I heard of that show. Yeah, someone was talking about that a while back. It's supposed.
it's
Is
it,
that the one?
it's
Is that
very
the
elegant and
housewife
fun.
that decides to go out and do her stand up on the side? She doesn't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. So it's
Yeah.
about this young lady who actually just craves this naturally. I mean, she's like cracking joke unintentionally,
Right, right.
without even investing any humor into it, and people just laughing.
Yeah.
And it's in her character, and she starts doing this stand-up comedy. There are actually semi-historical characters in there that actually existed. So it's
Yeah,
it,
I've heard a couple of my improv people mentioning this show, and I don't have a TV. I don't know. I don't own a TV, so like
oh,
every once in a while, I'll plug into somebody's Netflix and watch a couple of things. But I try to stay out of that overbearing media that's out there. And I got enough shit going on in my head. And when I do this, yeah, I'm crazy.
I got you.
I used to do this at work. Like people look at me and like, why did you do that? And I just go, and they'd be like, oh yeah, okay, leave this guy alone. Yeah, we should get into if this comes up here in another couple of seconds or minutes to 40, Amanda's gonna say go, and I'm gonna start the presentation. I think 10 minutes is fair enough to let people
You
check in.
got it. Yeah.
How are you doing over there, Cal?
He's got you muted.
Is there Cal? Are you there?
Yeah, I put you on mute, waiting for you to end that, wrap up that other meeting.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm
Oh.
trying to do 2 Zooms here, right? You're aware? So we're kind of between
I
Zooms.
really don't want to have a meeting with you if you're having another meeting on another Zoom.
Well, listen, I tried to get a hold of you to say, can you record it? And I never heard back from you. So I just had to boot up the other Zoom on a recording. I wasn't sure who else is joining your group, and I wasn't sure that they would be comfortable being recorded. So I just had to kind of make a last minute decision to run 2 Zooms. So that's how that happened.
So, wait. To get clear, like, why don't they have a link to join on this Zoom?
Well, I was trying to confirm with you that everybody would be okay to record the Zoom. And I think I thought about it for 5 minutes, and I was like, you know what? I don't think our private group really is going to be that comfortable doing a recorded Zoom. So I set up a second Zoom. I'm recording it. That's why we're doing 2 Zooms. And it's not, it's just to give everybody space in our private group so that we don't have to get into them being recorded or anything like that.
I don't feel comfortable with like you being distracted with a second device in a different meeting while we're having a meeting. It kind of feels like sort of, I mean, if they want to join the meeting, they're more than welcome.
Right. Listen, Cal, I mean, if you want to check out, that's fine. That's your Zoom link. What I'm saying to you is I set this up 4 or 5 days ago on our group, said that we're going to set up a second group. I've been struggling to try to get a lot of stuff organized. I don't know what to tell you. Like it's okay with me if you'd rather opt out. I appreciate that you're here, and I don't know if anyone from our group is coming up. If there's anybody else in the waiting room or whatever.
This makes me feel like I put some time and energy into something without knowing this.
Hey, listen, I texted you like 3 times this afternoon, buddy. I know you're busy. I know you've got a practice that you're probably massaging or doing body work or whatever. We just didn't connect. I couldn't connect cleanly enough with you to establish that we were going to record on your link. So that's why I started a second one. If you're welcome to check out. Listen, I think at this point you're being disrespectful, buddy. I think
Cal, I think it was just a time sensitivity thing. He was concerned about wanting to be able to record, and it was just being able to make sure that it was taken care of at a certain time. I don't think there's any intention to disrespect anybody.
Well, I know about this is our this is our designated night and time for this meeting. So
Right, and
it's
this is
like,
the meeting that I organized 5 days ago on our meeting site, right? So just let's move on. If you don't want to be here, by all means, punch out. But I'm just going to do my thing now, right? Thank you.
all right, well, I didn't know about this. This wasn't communicated to me. This
It
feels
was
pretty
communicated to you. It was
disrespectful that
communicated to you in a
stick
couple of
with
texts,
scheduled
and you never got back to me.
What?
It was communicated to you. It was communicated in a couple of texts and posts in the group. You never got back to me. It's okay. It's okay.
It's simply a miscommunication issue, not a.
I think you kind of sidestepped our original plan.
I did by opening a second group that we discussed. We were going to open a number 2 and a number 3 group to branch out a little bit, and I did that. And I did it
That
with
was
a
supposed to
public
be
group.
for a different day and a different time mark.
Okay, so listen. Anyways, Cal, I'm about to actually just turn you off. So
You're not even apologizing for what you done.
I don't need to apologize, buddy. I started the group.
For calling yourself black and white skin.
Yeah, okay. Punch him out.
Goodbye.
See you later.
Sorry, Cal.
So long, Cal. That makes it a lot easier. I'm running this group with a couple of people. It's a mutuality group, and what do you know? We're having mutuality issues. I don't think.
That was just handled poorly on his end, I think.
Yeah, there was an offense, something I said a few days ago, and he kind of wants to hash it out here.
Who said that first Zoom meetings needs to happen smoothly?
Yeah, I know, and I'm about being real. Like everybody who's watched my YouTube channel knows, I can be all over the place and kind of goofy, and dropping F-bombs and being a kind of a shitty guy at times. So unfortunate. I was hoping that original group would stay with us, but I'm not going to deal with that in a bigger section. So we have an evening for you guys, and I'm going to get into the body of what I'm talking about. I think a lot of people have watched the links go up in our consciousness group, and man, I'm really happy you're here. I love that it's just you and I. I should tell you, Jeff, I'm going to call you, or Fizbo. We know each other from the Terrence McKenna group, going back like what, 2 years now, at least, right?
I think more.
Yeah. And I always got a kick out of this guy. He's funny as hell. He posts some stuff that's just so off the wall. He's got a great group that he posts in a lot. What is that? Social. I can't remember the name of it right now. It's like something like, Society Crumble, right?
That's Sonia's group. Yeah.
So it's all about like how things are just going downhill. And what I'm looking to do here, is talk about, things are in a big downward spiral for everybody right now. Like we're all kind of going, holy shit, what's going on? And my plurality in the last year, Amanda and I were talking a little bit about IFS work, and she's reviewed some of the basic IFS stuff. We have, pretty much touched on a couple of things. So like, she's up to speed. I'm going to go through what I'm talking about with the intersection of non-duality, multiplicity, particularly using that IFS model that's kind of come along in the last 20 years or so. I really think that IFS, for those of you who don't know, internal family systems, is a modality of therapy or a psychological theory. It's evidence-based. It's been around for a while, and it's been very successful with a lot of people, particularly with trauma. I really think that is going to be our probably predominant 21st century therapy modality here within another few years or decade or so. And I'm speaking from experience from a guy who's been like dabbling with therapy for 20 years, right? Like I was diagnosed bipolar just after 2000. And, you know, therapy, and medication. And after a while, I got into what was called the Icarus Project way back when, which was an online forum, really, really cool forum run by people who are like alternative minded with certain psychiatric labels. They're less about labeling people and more about looking at things in a broader context. So what I've done over those last couple of years, having my multiplicity come out, at first finding it to be all this mixed features bipolar stuff that was like really, really difficult to try to manage. And we chased it with medications for months and nothing really got much better. In fact, it got a lot worse there for a while. And then when I started trimming the medications back, things started to level out. So what I've been doing, go ahead, man. Did you have a question?
Oh, no, I'm listening to you.
Okay. So what, feel free to just pop in if you need to. Like I'm, you know, I'm a rambler. I can go on and on. Everybody knows that I can do a 20-minute, 30-minute talk. It's nice having some interaction. I wish I could be reading these.
We have a TME and South Carolina represent from Holmes Douglas, and Steve Scallion's saying that beard though.
A beard, yeah. Everybody loves a beard. One of my routines, I don't want to ruin it for you, might have something to do with Santa Claus. Okay, so when we start posting those stand-up videos, you'll be catching some Christmassy stuff. So anyways, yeah, I've been living this stuff, right, for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I'm no expert. I'm an RN with a lot of a knack for looking at what's wrong in the clinical picture, or what needs to be tweaked, what needs to be adjusted, or maybe we try something a little bit different for a while. You know, I'm very much into duality. So if something over here is kind of like not getting me results, I just go totally the opposite way and play with that for a while. And then after a while, things are floating and kind of like blending, and I'm catching that sort of continuum, or that smoothness within whatever prospect or whatever situation I'm looking at that I need to try to figure out. So my psychiatrist calls me a mad scientist. I do, like, you know, different levels of medications for a month and try this and try that. And I basically just run my own show with a lot of this stuff. And it's a little bit, not because I think I know a lot, but I think I know my body, and I think I know that there's certain things that I'll try because they're suggested to me, and I'll try them for a month or two. And if they're not working, I'll move on. You know? And I think a lot of people wind up on medication sometimes for years without any kind of questions, and they're just kind of like humming along on all this medication and not really getting anywhere. They're just kind of band-aided on medication. I'm not anti-medication, by the way. I've mentioned that in another talk. If it works for you, great. But for me, like less is definitely more. So what can I tell you?
Have you ever tried any alternative other than just mainstream
like melatonin, valerian root, magnesium? I recently got the magnesium that you can take a couple times a day. It's not a laxative, you know. So there's a better binding magnesium that I'm using lately that smooths me out a little more. I've been using my THC and my CBD because I'm using a little more magnesium now. So it keeps me being too spacey at times. I'm really about using as little as possible, and this goes for booze as well. If I get a little drunk one night, maybe once a month, have a few glasses of wine or whatever, great. But my sleep gets all wonky and little are all blah for a couple of days. It's kind of like, you know, I got a little 4-year-old and a couple of babies, and I have a couple of shots of tequila or something, and you know they're like good night for like a couple of days. They're pretty wonky. So I try to stay away from that stuff. I think booze is, you know, I'm not going to make any friends in the liquor industry here, but booze is a really crappy drug.
It is. It's just toxin. Well, the reason I don't know if we can openly discuss different topics since you're planning to post this. Well, I know it's going to be a private group.
Well, the private group is out of the picture. We don't have to worry about that.
Well, what I wanted to mention about myself, I used to have, I guess, mild form of OCD.
Yeah.
And was prone to depressions, seasonal depressions.
Absolutely.
And that was going on up until year 2009. That's when I started experimenting with psilocybin.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, since I did that, all those symptoms, all the obsessive compulsive stuff, in terms of I would be checking if I lock the door 10 times before I step away from it. I mean, it's gone. Yeah. Right now, virtually, I mean, I'm sure if some devastating thing happens, I mean, I will get depressed, but overall, in terms of the chemical disbalance, seasonality of it, it's gone. So the interesting part is I haven't been using, haven't been regularly using the agent for the past 2 years. Occasionally I do, but not systematically. And what I noticed about the effect, long-term effect, is that it's lasting even if you stop dabbling with these things. So I'm just pitching my rusty coin in your jar. I mean, you mentioned that you having problems. Have you considered this as a therapy? Because I mean, there's this.
Yeah. That's what's floated me out of most of my funk. I was in this time last year. I'm trying to remember if I got into it around Christmas or just after Christmas, but I was doing hypnotherapy. I was actually seeing a hypnotherapist. No, not last year. About 18 months ago, the spring of 2019, I was doing hypnotherapy, and I went for like 9 or 10 sessions because I'm like, man, there's something going on. I'm just not getting it right. And I'd been around a couple of practitioners that suggested psychedelics for me, and thought that it might be a way to open me up. And I'm a nurse at this time, and a couple of these guys are in Miami, and I hang out with them. I go to a workshop, and I run into somebody from one of the hospitals. We know each other. We know different doctors. So I'm not going to get into doing mushrooms in Miami. That was my whole trip for like 4 or 5 years. But I was considering it and talking to people about it. And there's been like at least 5 or 6 people I've talked to who've done a couple of big mushroom trips, and their depression goes from here down to here. And I'm like, wow, really? And they're like, yeah, like it just lowers your barriers, brings you more cohesiveness in your parts, basically, right? Like that's what's happening, is you're becoming a more whole person.
If you look at the depression or any other psychological or psychiatric conditions that in terms of graphs, you have spikes up and down, and median line is somewhere in between. So to me, if I would to describe the effects, long-term effects, would be that this curve is flattened from top and bottom. So you still get emotional, you still can get sad, but it doesn't, in terms of the psychological impact, it doesn't linger. Right. It doesn't translate into this mindset or, mood that, persists. So that's what I noticed. And frankly, I mean, I had a reservation about sharing this information, but then I mean, detecting psilocybin metabolites in a urine sample or anywhere, it's insanely expensive for the companies. They rapidly do it.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's
but,
legal in so many places now too. So
really,
there's this whole multidisciplinary, what is it, association for
MAP.
psychedelic
MAPS,
studies.
yeah, multidisciplinary association for psychedelic studies.
Right.
Yeah.
So these guys, they know, right? They've got it figured out. There was enough guys in the 60s kind of pushing acid and let's get really like tune in, turn on, and drop out, and everybody freaked out. They're like, holy cow, everybody's going nuts with these psychedelics. They were made illegal, but for 20, 30 years, there's a couple of guys in there, a couple of psychologists, psychiatrists who were sticking with the psychedelic research, and they kept it going. And now we're looking at some of their studies that have been like going on for 20 years. I'll post something on the group. There's a good link about the 10 best psilocybin research studies. I'm not sure if they go back. I think they go back into the 90s, but there's several of them by very prominent people around the world who are finding like really amazing results from lowered addictions, decreased depression scores.
If you get a chance to check Hefter Institute. They Dennis McKenna is on board.
Yeah.
There are a couple of David Nichols, the chemist who actually synthesized DMT for Rick Strassman studies. He's on board there too. And they the latest research from different institutions, from Johns Hopkins, their own research, MAPS publications, they all share there. There's a load of fantastic data there. Check it out.
Yeah, and so many people think, these are drugs. And if you're synthesizing a psychedelic like LSD, yeah, I guess we can call it a drug. But there's so many natural substances out there. You mentioned DMT. It's kind of one of the more high-end, big-time things, which I'm kind of like, I don't think I need DMT. I'm okay with just like doing straight mushrooms. They're pretty.
You don't want to be catapulted.
No, I haven't tried DMT. I've got enough going on, enough kind of juicy stuff in my brain already that I think if I got into a big DMT trip, I might kind of like really whack everything out. We'll see. Maybe in another couple of years, that'll be something for me. But right now, I'm just sticking with, the basic family station wagon, straight up mushrooms. The good thing about psilocybin, and I researched this because I was bipolar and thinking, man, I don't want to get into taking too many psychedelics and winding up making my bipolar worse. So the good thing that I found was that, there's some, but there's very, very little comparatively major problems that are ongoing for people after mushrooms, after psilocybin. The toxic dose of psilocybin is something like 1,500 pounds. So you have to actually ingest 1,500 pounds, like, bushels or bales.
It's a brick of pure chemical, yeah.
Yeah, to really screw yourself up. So it's pretty safe. It's pretty probably the most well-traveled, well-studied, and safest psychedelic out there.
Yeah, it is.
And I don't even try to offer myself out there like as any kind of expert on this stuff. When it comes to psychology, I'm kind of really like I'm a hick from Northern Ontario, right? Like I look at stuff and I go, I was 16 years old showing up to a party with a case of 2-4 on my shoulder and saying, hey, let's get hammered. And it was just, I'm not so sophisticated that I try to get up there with a lot of people pumping out a lot of scientific ideas about things. I'm just putting stuff across in really basic terms and basic ways. And what I'll do now, because I don't know how long people can stay on, is I'll get going here, Fizbo, with my presentation on
Let's do that.
What I'm talking about. I'm going to cut the top of my head off maybe a little bit here. We'll see how this goes. Or maybe I can just squat a little bit down. I don't know. I'll go into a slump here so I can get into this with you. what I've been doing is, for the last 8 years, writing a blog about multiple personalities. And we started it as kind of like an outlet at the start of a divorce in 2012. So we went out for 3 months in the summer of 2012. We did 10,000 miles from Miami up to British Columbia, then across Canada, then back down to Miami. And we were writing about it all the time. And what it really turned out to be was, I realized this recently, was 70% of the writing was Patience, my main kind of like sidekick, right? The stuff that she was describing, like I was thinking, man, this is really stream of consciousness stuff. I don't know where it's coming from, but it's really cool. And I'm trying to write as fast as I can to catch the idea. The thing that's blown me away in the last year, since figuring out my multiplicity and looking at internal family systems, what internal family systems is doing is talking about the self, which is your seat of consciousness, right? Mm-hmm. And that seat of consciousness translates to all kinds of different religions out there. If you look at Hinduism or Buddhism or whatever, they're all talking about some sort of pure spirit, pure seat of consciousness. You know, you want to call it the soul, whatever. It doesn't really matter, right? For me,
yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't, I don't care about it. I'm not going to come out and say I'm agnostic, but I'm able to look at all of this stuff. And I really am able to look at a bunch of stuff with that duality going, because I think being bipolar for so long, I started to look at myself as, okay, man, you're really depressed and you're kind of into this and you're down on this. And then all of a sudden you're all juicy and, wild about this. So I started to look at like these continuums in my head, and I started to think about, okay, well, how can I be switched one way for so long and then the other way for so long? And basically what I figured out is I do, with Patience, have someone who's very kind of like high strung and ready to go, like, angry. He has a lot of fight response to threats from trauma. You heard Cal mention there a little while ago, like me referring to myself as really fucking black sometimes. That's the Patience angle. And I never got into it with him. He took it to be me demeaning, I think, African Americans or being insensitive, appropriating that culture. But she's the manic, somewhat borderline, somewhat cluster B freak in the system, right? And she's had to be that way because she's standing on a rock in the middle of a raging river, trying to control her life, having very little purchase, having very little control over things, but like just really working, right, to try to get the littles to kind of stay calm. And Mark was kind of like all over the place in different times and stuff. So she's been the internal mother. She's been the internal driver for our system. And I take my hat off to her, and I bow down to her whenever I get a chance, because she's really, really kept us alive, in certain hard situations. Having a badass in your corner like that, who will fight, who will like say, okay, fuck this, we're not doing this anymore. I would have just gotten steamrollered from a lot of things over the years. So I'm appreciative of her fire and her fight. And I look at her as a libertarian. So I get into these political, talking about different things when she comes out, fuck this COVID stuff. We're not going to get into COVID discussions, but she's got some real loose, fast and loose ideas. And then Mark's very much more leftist, very much more collectivist. It's interesting. It's interesting to me to have those different dynamics going on in the same person. And I'm going to talk to you about that with my little box of mixed nuts right now. So our mixed nuts, right? This is what I call your individual. And we all are individuals. And we have great utility as individuals. The one thing about collectivism or communism or whatever you want to call it that people freak out about is like, oh, you lose your individual rights, and if communism is done wrong, and it has been done wrong multiple times, It is a fucking disaster, right? And we all know this. We all know that ultimate power corrupts, whether you're capitalist or communist. Once you get into those further regions of activity, you're gonna fuck up. You're gonna. It's okay. I'm not bitching about these people. I'm just looking at them as saying, yeah, you know, if you are a carpenter with a hammer, after a while everything looks like a nail, and you just pound your hammer away at whatever it is you want to do. Whether you're capitalist, communist, so I can float that whole territory with different ideas, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. So as an individual, right? If you're the tiger, and this is a little bucket of Tiger Bomb. If you're the tiger, if this is your ego state, we can call these people protectors or persecutors. You know, they're harsh. They have a lot of fire in them. There's IFS language that I'm not going to really get into much, aside from talking mainly about the self. But you can have this kind of fire in you going on, and you can be a very fiery person, and you can get far in life with, you know, that kind of mystique or that kind of ethic, right? So I'm going to put that down here, out of the way for a minute. You can be a tech guy. You can be very logical and you know, work science, work strains of logic very well to your advantage, and this is a good way to be as well. All of these variances I'm talking to you about are ego states, right? So different ego states, like if you're in customer service, you're like, hey, right this way, would you like a table or a booth? What you're doing is you're putting out a representative that you know is going to be successfully matched with your customers to get them seated and to look after them. They get served a nice dinner. So if you're a tech guy, like Amanda here helping out tonight, that is awesome, right? You can figure stuff out that other people are like, what do I do now? So the technology stuff, I'm going to put that down. If you're an adventure guy, you might be scuba diving, you might be doing other stuff, but you're out there like adrenalizing, you're getting into sports and, you know, different things you put in your little adventures, whether you go off to expeditions around the world or you're a weekend warrior, you're out there adventuring, right? Then you've got nature guy, and I don't mean to sound guy all the time, but let's go nature woman here for a while. It's a beautiful thing to be matched in nature, and I'm so glad we're outside tonight. Beautiful evening. There's hardly any breeze. This yard I live in, I'm so privileged to be here, and I love this yard. If any of you see my YouTubes, I do them mostly here, and it works out really great. Whatever it is that you're into for nature is a big bonus, because nature is that sort of mirror or dynamic out there that's showing us what works and what doesn't work, right? Mm-hmm. And science is kind of like to some degree, sometimes trying to take over nature or get a leg up on nature, and I think that's a mistake. I can talk to you about that some other time. But nature is another sort of aspect that we all kind of follow or get into. You can groove to spirituality. I got a little candle here. I don't know if you can see that very well. For me, spirituality is just basic, right? The root of spirit is it's the same as air. So we're all breathing in air, exhaling air. We're all exchanging these molecules, oxygen, whatever other particles are out there, are floating around, and we're all the same entity, right? So for non-duality, there's a great TED Talk. Shit, I can't remember it. I remembered it a couple of times in the last few days, but I can't remember the name of it right now. About a guy who says, you know, on any given day, you'll take like most of your forearm will leave your body, whether it's exhaled through gases and moisture, or broken down in your body and excreted in either urine or your feces. So you're losing a certain amount of your body, and then your environment's putting it back into you. So we're exchange machines. We're constantly exchanging, right?
Cycle, yeah.
So I the way I look at it is we're all dumplings in the same soup. And you know, the non-duality thing kind of freaks people out a little bit, because they think, well, if we're all one, you know, what happens to the individual? And I got into meditating really heavily 30 years ago, and I started to really question this. Like, okay, I sense the oneness, right? So what does that mean? Do I become, you know, guru guy and really get into, you know, tracking with a lot of stuff? And I did quite heavily get interested in Buddhism for a while. And I'm still interested. I'm still interested in all kinds of stuff. But for me, the spirituality stuff is just standard. And if you're an atheist and are agnostic and you don't like the candle metaphor, that light in the world or whatever, I'm okay with that too. Like, if you're gonna attach or find yourself being kind of nihilistic, how do you pronounce it? I'm always fucking up the pronunciation.
Nihilist, yeah.
Nihilistic.
Yeah. So you can attach all the nothingness you want, right? There's fucking tons of it out there, right? Like, fill your boots with that shit. I think nihilism is just another part of your sort of journey where you get into it. But even Nietzsche was saying, you know, it's a process that you need to kind of like work your way out of. So he's famous for being, you know, quoted as like all of these nihilistic quotes, and I think they're great. But he was in process of making his way out of that. Like, he was visiting it, but not moving there. You know what I mean? So I don't have a problem with people who don't have. They don't.
So let me for a second drop this little teaser here.
Yeah.
So when you describe these properties, what you would describe as a property of a unique egoic expression that we define as, okay, this is multiple personality, this is personality number 1, personality number 2, number 3, number 4, so on.
Right.
How do we differentiate these from what in psychology called behavioral archetypes? So you have a trend. So a lot of times, when I read about this, the subject of, say, multiple personality, there's no solid consensus on whether this phenomena actually represent individual insulated conscious states, or rather the conscious state, the consciousness remains the same. It's this at the core of the individual with a fractioned personality, with a multiple personality. It's the same perceptual homeostasis, let's put it this way, but on top of it, it's like a glove that you take off and put on the different one. With that comes the characteristics of personality that are very specific to given persona that occupies the person at given moment. And the interesting idea behind this view is that the consciousness itself, the essence, the observer, whatever you want to call it, the Atman, is featureless. It's a state of pure awareness. Everything, the human monkey, the Darwinian mind that overlays on top of it, that's where all this multiple shenanigans happens. But at the base of it, it's the same thing. So going back to the question I wanted to ask you, how do we differentiate how do we determine whether it's actually a separate mind, or whether it is a separate mind or not?
Right. Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, it's, for me, it's always been a process of elimination, and so feeling calm and centered and in my sort of sweet state or flow, I'm like, wow, this is really cool. Like, I don't have all of this shit going on where I'm like torqued this way or stressed about this or whatever. Like, it's an elimination of, if I want to say drama, or I forget what the Buddhist, what is it, samsara, the word for like whatever's going on in the world.
Earthly, yeah, that's samsara.
Yeah. So if you can step back from that, and I get mixed up all the time, okay, between self and non-self. the Buddhism stuff, the Hindu stuff. I'll be talking about something and think that I'm on track with the Buddhist philosophy, and somebody go, no, that's Hinduism, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, shit, right. So don't look at me as any kind of finer point, very detailed guy. But what I'll say about ego states, whether if we're going to use a 0 to 10 scale, for 0 being suicidal and 10 being homicidal, I always like to try to live in that 4, 5, 6 range with my bipolar over the years. So I'd always kind of like gauge myself that way. So holy shit, like I'm in a 7 for a week now, or I'm getting into the 8 territory. I got to take some antipsychotics and calm myself down. I've played with all of those different, anything that you can do with medications out there, just about anything with pharmaceuticals I've experimented with. So what I find is, I'm going to use your split screen a little bit right here, Fizbo. You're up on top, right? So you're going to be the high guy, and I'm going to be the low guy. And so, as depressed guy here down low, and then Fizbo up top, happier, raring to go. We're both ego states, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what we have between us, this line, is the equanimity, right? So it doesn't shift. It's a static. We can be down here for years and then up here for other years, whatever. But that equanimity, that sort of evenness. So these floating states can do whatever they want, but there's an equanimity, there's a baseline. That to me is the differentiation for your more pure state or more settled state,
mm-hmm.
when you find that equanimity.
Okay.
So did that kind of get you okay?
Yeah, well, sort of.
Okay, I'm
just
coming up on what you're talking about. I just haven't.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do a shitload of this kind of stuff where I'm talking to different people, but I got some stuff worked out for us here.
Yeah.
So this guy, the tape, that's your helper person who wants to come up and roll out some tape and fix your wound or whatever. I've been this guy quite a bit of my life. To say it's codependency is one way of looking at it. They've come up with this new thing calling it pro-dependency, where you're well matched to certain situations where you need empathy and you need to be conscientious and really giving care to somebody. So I'm pretty happy with I've trimmed back or have cut back a lot of codependency over the years. But we need each other, right? Like, to say I'm independent, I'm an island, right? Doesn't work. We need each other. We're a cooperative species. So some of this is okay. Then you get into the cultural, or what I think of as racial sometimes, the whiteout. So if you just want to go around painting everything white, that's fine, right? You're gonna get a certain distance with that, and but after a while you got to go back, because the old stuff you painted is falling apart and it's looking like it's getting a little darker or stained or whatever. So trying to paint everything one color doesn't really work. But some people really into their culture, really into their ethnic identity, and that's how they focus a lot of their ego space, which is fine, right? I'm not against any of these, right? I'm just laying out a bunch of different examples for you. And then this is my favorite. This is the Zip Fizz. Can you guys read that okay?
Yeah.
Zip Fizz. That's the little container. We pop that open and pour the crystals in your water, and you get a vitamin water. Oh. So this is your career guy, right? I'm adding some value to things because I'm like really good at plumbing, Like, if you ever needed a plumber and like really badly needed a plumber, you're so happy to see that guy walk through your front door and fix your problems. So it's great having these guys around, but you're not your career, right? We've all figured this out pretty much lately. We do things for others. We have a cooperative effort to say, I'm the Zip Fizz guy, whether you're a plumber, a nurse, statistician, you know, we can go on and on, but all these thousands of different people doing specialized career stuff is beneficial for humanity, right? Gets a little over specialized sometimes, gets a little too hierarchical sometimes, where, you know, like I like to say, the most important person in a hospital is the housekeeper. Cleanliness, right? But they make like whatever 100 times less than the CEO, who, you know, if you took the CEO out of his penny loafers and his Armani suit and put him in scrubs and put him to work on the board, you'd be looking at Joe disaster after 15 minutes. You know, most of them couldn't do healthcare to save their life, even if they were at one time a doctor or one time a nurse. You get too wrapped into the business end of things, and that's specialization, right? But I go into that in my book a little bit. I talk about over specialization and how it doesn't really serve us. So I'll leave that for another talk at some other time. So basically what we've done here with the individual is we've unpacked all of these different roles that we have. And while all of these different roles are in here, you can't really get to the bottom of your bucket, right? This is yourself. And what's in here, what the couple of remaining things are stuck in there, right? So we can turn this upside down. Stuck. You're stuck in your individual, right? And what's in here is how you're all wound up, right? Your trauma, your life experience that's been kind of like, did you get, you know, 14 inches of beatings when you were a kid, or, you know, 26 sexual assaults or whatever, right? Okay. So all of these things that kind of like take your light away or kind of like bind you somehow, right? We can have feet and miles and miles of this. And we got a guy, I won't get too political for y'all, but we got a guy right around 45.
Well played.
So, yeah, we all have trauma. Like, there's no getting around it, right? Like, that's part of growing up. You fall down, you scrape your knee, you cry, you're like, oh, and then you're a little more careful. You put your hand over a flame and you're like, oh, that's hot. You know, you don't do that too many times. You figure out the trauma is there to teach you to stay on track and to kind of conform, right? So I've looked at a lot of my trauma over the years as serious and debilitating, very, very undermining, like that whole abandonment picture where you're feeling, you know, I'm not good enough, or I don't have the, why do I always feel undermined? Like Spider, my littlest one, the kid who spent 2 months in the nursery in the hospital with very little attention in the beginning, a lot of interrupted attachment, a lot of, you know, things go a little bit squirrely, not quite smooth, and he'll just drop, right? And what I talk about with him is my trap door that just opens, and then I'm down into a pit. And it used to be for days and weeks. Now, especially since the psilocybin trips I did last summer, and, you know, I continue to do them maybe every season or so, that stuff's 80% gone. You know, I was suicidal in my thinking every day from the age of 8 till the age of 54. So for 46 years, daily suicidal thoughts. 2 or 3 or 4 mushroom trips over the summer and fall when I started last year, down by 80%. Now, if I got a little suicidal ideation, a little kind of like, oh, I feel really crappy, I should just end it, that stuff's gone in minutes, where it used to take weeks sometimes. So lowering those boundaries, finding yourself more open and spread out, creates this lightness, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the last thing in our bucket, is yourself, your dynamic spirit, you know, your pure and perfect spirit, your godlight, your Atman, or your Buddha nature, or, you know, whoever wants to call it whatever. It's where you're immutable, where there's a perfection, not to say a perfection, but just that equanimity of being and knowing, settled and pure, and things go a lot smoother for you. And what I've been finding in the last couple of months as I've been unraveling more of my multiplicity is that this knowing part of myself, this what I call in the book our indivisible. This is your individual, right? And you can stick your individual inside it and pack it with all kinds of ego states and cruise around with that. And it's handy to have a container for it, right? Like it's nice to be, like I call this my meat puppet. So it's nice to be all condensed and contained, and you can cruise around with that meat puppet, get stuff done, you know, enjoy ice cream, which is like one of my favorites. That is a function of your individual, and your individual is super, super important. I'm not an either or guy. Like I like the duality of things. I like the paradoxes of things. I've been looking at this stuff for like 30 years. I got into my early 20s and this trap door kept opening, and I dropped for like a couple of days or a week, and I was like, holy shit, what the fuck's going on? You know, like I'm just like suddenly miserable. Just, there's nothing, everything is fucking black. The world is shit, right? Whereas last week I was going skiing or, you know, doing lots of fun stuff. So couldn't figure it out, got really annoyed by it after a while, and got into heavy meditation for a while, and a lot heavier meditation than you're supposed to get into. And there was one weekend I did, like in 48 hours, I think I was meditating for about 43. So pee breaks, eating, the meditation would drift into sleep a lot, but not very long sleep. And so I really kind of pushed it, right? I really kind of like, and my meditation instructor told me, don't do this stuff too much, you'll drive yourself crazy. And I'm like, I'm already fucking crazy. So I went hunting for what's happening in your consciousness with a lot of sort of verve and a lot of recklessness, right? Because I was just sick of this trapdoor opening. We would drop and we would be gone, right? Just like totally at the mercy of this, whenever, not understanding it. Just like poof, you're walking along, minding your own business, and all of a sudden you're depressed for a week. You know, it's just like I hated it. And what I figured out, what I sort of started to figure out is, you know, right around this time, The Last Temptation of Christ came out with Willem Dafoe. And I'm sitting there watching him like in the desert, sitting there with the snake and, you know, opening himself to all the evil and stuff. And I'm thinking, fuck, if Willem Dafoe can do it, we can probably give that a crack. And so we jumped into it, you know. We went and tried that. And evil kicked our ass for a couple of decades. It really did. We thought, okay, fuck, you know, we'll just do it. Probably it even doesn't even really exist, you know. You'll get a lot of people talking about evil, and it's out there. Part of who we are. It's part of our makeup. Getting into your dark energy and looking at it really kind of closely. What I find is you're doing this at one end so that you can move over and do this at the other. So in the paradox, in the duality, get into something really, really hard for a while, and then all of a sudden you'll track over and things will be really, really easy or light for a while, right? A lot of us kind of live in that middle zone where we don't want to be, you know, really evil, or we try to be good, but, you know, and I don't even like good and evil anymore. What I like is unreliable and reliable. That's the way I think of those ends of the continuum. And for me, getting into that release of all goodness, right? To say to myself, okay, you're going to go explore this and go down into that pit and really, really try to figure out what the hell's going on, what keeps drawing you down there and dropping you in there. And, you know, eventually I figured out it's Spider, right? He's got this big abandonment chip on his shoulder, and he freaks out at different things and then just drops, right? And we he's over. And what he loves, he's the emotional leader. So I was fasting last year and I fasted for like 10 days in August, and then I did 18 days in November. And on day 13 in November, that's when Spider kind of came out and looked at me and said, "Hey, dude, the only fucking thing I like to do is eat, right? This is bullshit." And I got that intuitive message so clearly from this entity inside that I was like, wow. And I knew I had an emotional leader. I knew I had a delicate child that wasn't satisfied unless they were eating. So I was going after that with the fasting. And that's when I encountered this guy. And it was like, well, okay, I'm a multiple.
It's a rubber band effect. The more you push towards the polarity, the more the drawing force will not put you back in the middle. It will snap you back to the opposite side.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what we have is there were some guys in the thread. I don't know if it was earlier today or yesterday, talking about the I can't remember what it is, like the single number. It's kind of a knot. It's not really a number. When we think of numbers, we think mathematics, and mathematics is a way of explaining things, right? So there's one of us, right? There's just one thing going on, but you can break it down and divide it and play with all of these different things and look at it mathematically and catch certain features, right? Mm-hmm. So you're catching these features with mathematics or science or whatever it is you want to do to kind of like highlight an area, and that's a beautiful thing. It's an artistic, logical sort of expansion into certain characteristics or features of what we are.
Yeah.
You go non-duality, and I don't know if you guys checked out the Sailor Bob video.
Okay.
Yeah, he's like, we're not teaching you anything, right? He's like, non-duality is like, this is what you are, right? It doesn't change. You can hit it with a hammer all day long. You know, you can burn it. You can, whatever it is you think you can do to this, it's just going to sit there and go, yeah, all right, whatever. This stuff at our core, and I don't like to use the word core so much, but at our center sits up there and gives us this broad perspective, right? And all these little guys bouncing around on top of it, if your individual isn't unpacked and kind of you haven't worked out your parts, this is jammed in there at the bottom, and that's okay too. You know, if you want to spend your life with the purest, most performative, distinct, open energy tucked into yourself and hidden because you're really into nature, or you're really into being a helper, or, you know, I'm such a good zip fizzer, I've got this career, and I'm a big shot, and, you know, that's okay. That's a decent choice. Everybody's choice. You can do that stuff. But if you unpack some of these things and you lay them around in a circle, like I've done here, we can see it on the live. But what you're doing is you're using that duality, that progression of paradox. Like you were saying, Fizbo, the elastic effect of saying, okay, this guy isn't going to be front and center for this week. We're taking the week off of our trauma and we're going fishing, or we're doing something, you know, fun, whatever. This guy that keeps helping people all the time, you know, he really gets a charge out of helping people and he wants to be in the center. He's going to learn to kind of hang back. The spirituality guys, you know, oh, this whatever is everywhere. This is spirituality, but it's the simplest form of spirituality. It doesn't give a shit about most of your religions, you know. I'm going to probably get in trouble for saying that, but the effect of this is you are being. You are dynamic in that you're not static. You're not one thing or one aspect of things. You're everything. And in that sense of being, in that sense of equanimity, that's where you get that spiritual buzz, right? So all of these guys, if they learn to kind of form a circle or a ring, or they learn to open up and hold space in the middle for this, that's when things really open for you. And what these guys were talking about on the thread a while back was that one movement, right? So basically, we're closed, we're locked in with this individual, with the different components of it. Maybe this one's the one that you're sticking out the most, and this is the one you're riding. You know, I'm gonna ride this horse until it drops because, man, I'm a pastor, and you know, I've got a really good life. I've got a congregation, yada 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 yada. You know, so that's your thing, right? But you're sacrificing that beingness for an ego state, right? And the ego state, make up your individual, express yourself in certain ways, but then you also need to sort of set them aside. And once you learn to set them aside, out comes yourself, which is the IFS self with a capital S, or what I refer to as the indivisible in your book. I'm ruining the book a little bit by talking about it before it's even out, but what we came up with 30 years ago, and we've tried it and tested it and tested it, and it's held up fucking beautifully, is a diagnosis, right? Basically, there's all of these different ideas about what's out there. But I diagnosed, and I didn't know I was diagnosing, but when I finally kind of came to this principle, it's 13 words, okay? I am, like everyone, an individual, indivisible presentation of that which is whole. You can say those 13 words and kind of like really, really live that for a couple of years. You'll start to feel that paradox. You'll start to feel that room that your individual alters or your individual ego states will open up and make room for your indivisible. And the indivisible is perfect. It doesn't need anything, right? But it can be obscured in the bottom of the bucket with all these guys jumped in and crammed in on top of it. So you can't just cruise around with your individual. Your individual is important, gets a lot of stuff done. Ice cream, sex. you want this thing around, right? It's cool. But you also need to understand you're unpacking it sometimes. And here's the way I look at it. I think we reincarnate. If you think about molecules in our body, think about all the dynamics that are going on and this light energy and everything. We reincarnate several hundred times per second, because what's happening on that continuum is you're an individual, you're finite, you're concrete, you're material, and then you're the indivisible. And
when you use term reincarnate, you don't mean it in a you probably mean it in more a transpersonal sense rather than just metaphysical.
I don't even like the linguistics of using that word. For me, when I thought of it years ago, I thought, yeah, I'm constantly presenting myself, presenting the same pattern, right? So it looks like I'm living this 80-year life.
Yeah.
But there's been trillions and trillions of marks, right? In the first 40 or 50 years, with all of these other little side people that were kind of hiding out and putting mark forward and putting mark forward and putting mark forward. And now there's this more wider, complex, very, very open concept stuff where I'm like, okay, I'm everybody, right? I'm maybe not just the crew that I have rolling around that are materialized in my psyche, but as the non-duality experience of meditation or mindfulness, whatever it is you get into, that opens you, right? That makes you one with everything. And for a lot of us, it's getting out in nature, right? And all of a sudden we're like, wow, here we are.
So I like your analogy with this jar, because the jar is pretty much constrained in terms of size. So
right.
your main piece is crammed at the bottom with everything on top of it.
Right.
So these pieces are not loose. I mean, you can't really shake this jar when it's full and expect to somehow the largest and most central piece at the bottom end up at the top and become available. I mean, for that, and I'm reserving to the same analogy that you used, jar. Jar has to expand. So you have this room inside that allows you to shuffle this properties. And in order to have room, you have to expand.
Yeah, expansion is it's again, the contraction is the indivisible or the individual. Yeah. The expansion or openness is your indivisible. And you're constantly doing that, constantly doing that. But what we're taught and what we're conditioned to think of is pay attention to your individual, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good boy, right? Get good grades in school. Whatever, you know, we're drilled to focus on that individual, and we're crafting, we're refining the individual all the way through our life. But several hundred times a second, we're also opening to our indivisible. And when we open, we're like, well, you know, we can be anything we want. But I got to be a good boy. I got to be a nurse, right? Got to get on this track and stay with that.
You're talking more of a social and moral aspect of how we're supposed to shape our own perception of ourselves. Oh, I'm supposed to do that. I'm a parent. I have a child. I have to take care of her. I have to raise it. So all this, not obligations, commitments, or goals, I guess, they also shape that part of persona that takes over and says, oh, I should be career oriented, or no, I would like to, this is part of what I crave the most, to be in nature. But there, I believe there's a strong aspect of social conditioning that enables these things. And as long as we live in a world society, yeah, we're doomed to go through these cycles and put on these masks.
Right.
And sometimes people do it without even realizing it.
Yeah, it's an instinctive drive to conform to your tribe. Right?
Yeah,
we all want to belong. Correct. Like I desperately want to belong.
But you see, it's a biological property. I mean, this came when we're still living in the caves, and where social conditioning was pretty much part of the survival. It became so deeply wired into our behavioral patterns that it's pretty much a norm of being a human.
Right.
So it's interesting aspect how biology plays the role in orchestrating these constructs that are purely invention of, you know, talking monkeys.
Yeah. I mean, when the environment demands certain things of you, and our environment has been really stringent at times, we can get into the concept of scarcity and looking out there and saying, there's only like 3 goats on the side of the mountain, and there's 400 villagers. So the 3 lucky hunters that get up the side of that mountain and kill those goats will feed their families, maybe 40 or 50 people for the winter, and another 150 people are going to starve. But that's the goat picture, right? So what's the other picture? The hunter-gatherers. So all the gatherers are out there picking berries and nuts and different things and keeping us going with that. So, you can make the 3 goats go a long way. You can do different things. It's to look at yourself as scarce is your ego state, whether, you think you need to identify as the whiteout and everything has to be white for things to be right? Yeah. Or the nature lover, everything's got to be totally natural, right? We don't want any of these guys, right? Like this technology stuff, it's all bad.
Yeah.
There's a lot of crappy technology out there that just kind of wastes a lot of our time. I can get into that in another talk, but what we're seeing with the competition between this stuff is who's on top of the hill, who's the king of the mountain, right? So everybody's trying to get on top. Well, you know, I want to be I want to be the main white guy, or I want to be, you know, Joe Nature. Everything's got to be about nature. Or no, technology. We can be. Let's terraform Mars, and we'll figure out another planet. All of this stuff is superfluous if that's all you're doing. I don't know if the superfluous word came out exactly right, but what happens is when you step back from this stuff and you open it up and you hold space in the center of your being, right? Everybody's like, okay, we're all valid. We all have, and this is me with my multiplicity. Really, like, this is how I've been managing, and I've been doing, I think, fairly well for a guy who's new to it. Is everybody's valid. Everybody has a function that's important, and they're respected, even if they're backwards and upside down on some certain shit. And I'm looking at them sometimes, you know, like I talk in a way that's very immature or very kind of basic because I'm like 70% kids, right? Like I haven't grown up in a lot of ways, which is, I've counted as a blessing. But when you back all of these guys away, right, and give them that space in the middle, when this comes out and it starts to do its thing and it starts to level everything out, can I get you to hold that individual there for a second? You just maybe hold it off to the side. So this is important, right? This is part of the cycle. You
Yes.
confine and then you open. You confine and then you open. And you confine and then you open. And you're doing this hundreds of times a second. But you're only keeping your eyes on where you confined and what you're doing as your individual, right? So if you take your attention and soften out with meditation and mindfulness, other practices, now you're meeting your indivisible. And when you're open to your indivisible, this supersedes everything else, right? Because this doesn't necessarily take over, but it opens you to a point where equanimity, right? This peacefulness, this state of being. I'm relaxed. So I don't need to go out and drive myself crazy trying to be zip fizz anymore. I'm gonna have a job. I'm gonna have a career. I'm gonna be productive and support my society and my colleagues, my tribe, whatever, right? But this isn't me anymore. This is me.
This is you. So the thing is, I can only offer my personal experience. I practice Isha Yoga. Yeah. So friends of ours, they actually been at it for what, 4 years? 4 years. I'm sorry, I have my wife here. She's not participating. But point being, I noticed the change in them. And what you're describing, it's exactly that. All those, not, I wouldn't call it detritus personalities. I mean, they're I guess essential, but they gradually, it was almost like an onion. They would peel them off. Doesn't mean that these things disappear. They still have to go to work. They still have to do the daily chores. And occasionally they do get angry and, life is not perfect. But what I noticed that during the time when we just simply sit and talk, the change about them, and I've known they're couple, and I've known them for 20 plus years. They actually live in Boca Raton near you. So the thing is, as they practice this practice meditation, practice yoga, daily, continuously, what happened is that it's still the same people, but at the same time, that essence of their personality, not personality, but who they are, became more pronounced. And the way I perceive it, it's not only in the small nuances, like how people talk, it's the ambience around them. It's tranquil. It's actually very pleasant to, it's always been, they're friends, but like within past several years, as we would come and visit them, I noticed that around them, there's an aura of calmness. And how should I describe it? almost like a tranquil completeness.
It's a spaciousness.
Yes. And at the same time, and I'm just offering my personal take on it. At the same time, missing those aspects of their personalities kind of alarmed me. And funny thing is, I'm trying to do the same thing to myself. I started this practice, but I think ego, in a sense, how we describe in the like mainstream pedestrian term, in terms of all those unique properties of individual who say don't have a multiplicity, doesn't have a multiple personality, but has a unique trend to their character. That part is somehow intimately bound to the ego. And the more you dissolve that ego, the more this superficial layers of orchestrated characters on top of your true essence kind of start to fade. They don't disappear, but they kind of settle back to the background, and your true nature starts to emerge. And a lot of times it's I use it, I sometimes I call it like a spiritual anthill. Like you lose that egoic uniqueness, so that helps you in so many ways personally, but at the same time, I mean, I'm sorry, forget about anthill. I mean, I was thinking something else.
No.
Look at me, I'm using multiple personalities. No, but my point being, we and I guess it's a part of the Western society where individual, like distinctly pronounced character, is what we put the most value in.
Right.
If you take Asian societies, or if you travel to some monastic establishment like some Buddhist temple in the middle of the jungle, you would notice these people live kind of in an anthill society of their own. Their ego is no longer an obstacle for the greater purpose, what they're doing there, whatever that purpose is.
Right.
So that is, and to be honest with you, I mean, and maybe I haven't walked this earth long enough to encounter it. What I noticed, the people who are actually in that position, they don't have this. As soon as they conquer that aspect of their self, they no longer have that problem of dealing with the negative aspect of their personality, because to them it becomes a mask they can take off.
Yeah.
So they deal with it from a kind of an externalized perspective, saying, okay, that's me, that's a bad me, that's a good me, that's so me, and I'll still have to wear them time to time, but at least I know it's not essentially that inner me that that I gradually revealed through this long, tedious practice. So it's an interesting notion that this bubble has to burst, this outer boundary that
it isn't bursting though. This is us. We're indivisible. We're all powerful, right? We're constant. Like, take this meat puppet, right?
Okay.
Feed it crap for most of its life, and it still goes 80 years, right? I mean, think of a machine out there that you can kind of just drop off with very little else going on around it, feed it, hopefully a little nurturing and a little sort of refinement, education, whatever you want to call it, and boom, that thing goes for 80 years or 100 years.
Yeah.
That's a pretty incredible machine.
Yeah.
Right? So we're perfect already. We're just only focused on the one aspect, the confinement.
Correct.
Individual. The indivisible, which is happening simultaneously. These things are going on constantly within you. Right? There's no bubble that needs to burst. This is the process. And Tom Kitt, this guy on One Positive.
Mm-hmm.
I've read some of his stuff. I get a little bogged down with it because he's very esoteric with certain things, but it's beautiful. Like the way he writes, I wish I could remember his partner's name because I've written some stuff together. I don't want to forget that guy. But when he gets into talking about the eternal movement, right? That eternal, I can't remember the way he puts it, but it's basically, it's just one repetitive movement that keeps going on and on and on. And that's what it is. It's the closing, the confinement, right? Of the psyche, the individual, which is beautiful. It's like a very vibrant, very cool 80-year machine that we get to fly around in all the time, and it's fantastic. And then there's the openness that we advocate. But we tend to like just, we don't look at that very much because nobody knows how to fucking deal with that. You know, like
Correct.
It's easier to get someone confined in their indivisible or individual and manage them on whatever kind of track you need them on, right? So if you forget about this and focus on this, the idea is, oh, now I've got a really strong army. I've got a strong society. I've got a strong, you know, whatever you want to call it. Family, tribe, sports team. All of these individuals packed together and performing the same way is supposed to be the height of our operations. And I want to, it's not even 10% of our operations, right? It's important. But the way we're living with up until the 20th century, we're substandard. If we were getting a grade in school of 10% or 12%, your mom wouldn't be pretty happy with that report card, right?
Yeah.
And Earth isn't happy with the report card that we keep winding up focused on the individual. Open to your indivisible. Be there with it. This starts to come up too, because now it's smoother, it's better organized, it's open, right?
Well, it's kind of a catch-22.
To raise the vibration or raise the function. I don't even want to use the word function, just the balance, clarity. The balance of where we're at, right? Once you get that balance happening, forget it. You're doing all of it.
It's true. I believe, to be honest with you, I think the main dilemma here is that people don't know how to tackle it. A lot of us reserve to meditation because meditation provides a space where you actually can try and get rid of the thoughts.
Right.
So it's like you sit there, like it's like one of those moments when you stare into space without like thinking, just almost like a senior moment. That's where you can actually find it, because that ball on the in front of you, people don't know how to find it, primarily because they're looking for it from the angle of one of the other items. It's a featureless property, but you approach it with the people approach it with the tools that belong to the characteristics that are outside of that entity, if you will, or essence. So, and given that it's, I mean, I don't know where you stand on the beliefs, what it is. I mean, soul, Atman, observer, part of the God, ground of all being expressed as a human, right?
All the little candle stuff that we keep, nobody's happy with this stuff. Like you can get a couple of billion people on board with your religion, but guess what? You're half-ass, because there's another couple of billion people who are over here going, no, that stuff isn't right. It's this stuff, right? So you never get these guys together because they're all kind of like, oh. It doesn't have to be a big deal. This is what you are in your balance. Your diagnosis, right, for the 21st century.
Yeah.
I am, like everyone, an individual, various individuals, indivisible presentation of that which is whole.
Yeah.
you're not one or the other. You're everything. And that everythingness is uncomfortable, right? Because holy shit, like I'm an
But it's uncomfortable to the ego, primarily.
Yeah, because if you're, you know, who's the good guy here? If you're Joe Adventure, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're out there climbing mountains and sailing boats around different oceans, and you know that's the good life. That's the hard living, energetic, you know, example to everybody that you can do anything you want, right? And so this is like what a lot of people strive for.
Mm-hmm.
And this is okay. This is great. It's a great use of your meat puppet to get on a boat and sail around the world. I mean, that's phenomenal, right? Everybody should do something like that. But it's not who you are. It's part of your individual that you can package and make happen. And when these people are happening and when they're really doing a lot of that crazy, like wild, holy crap, I can't believe you did that stuff, it's because they brought that standard individual out of that 10% range, and they've opened a little bit more to this kind of stuff, and they've magically kind of like balanced out, and they're in that 60 or 70% range. And we consider these people like superstars. All they're doing is they've kind of got this figured out. They've kind of got this balance, this equanimity, right? This state, this flow.
So they found equilibrium inside of them.
Right.
Yeah.
We're coming up on 9 o'clock. We're going to run for another half an hour or 20 minutes. It's just you and me.
We also have a couple of live feeds.
Yeah, we should get to some of the comments on the live feed and see what people are.
Actually, no one's replied in terms of like wanting to communicate. They've just messaged. Holmes Douglas said that he had to go, but thank you for this. Can't wait for the next one. And then the last person mentioned your beer. So,
Okay.
but we've had well over at least like, I want to say almost 10 people through the live feed in and out. At one point, I think we had like 6 people watching. So
Right.
it wasn't just you guys, and I'm here too. So you know.
Yeah. and you know, I'm so grateful you're here, man. I've always gotten a kick out of your stuff, and I've always thought, here's a guy who's like so out there and warped and kind of gets the kind of like weirdness and the sort of twisty kind of component of things. Your humor is just beautiful.
Thank you. I keep my nasty side at home, away from my laptop and my phone. Yeah. Yeah, I certainly look forward to paying you a visit. We're planning to be there after January. We'll be in Naples, but I'll commit to that drive. Come see you.
Yeah, we got to get together. You were talking about the South Florida trip, I think 6 months ago or 4 months ago.
No. We went and we came and went. We've been there for a month, and it's just I had a family there, and they're always like, take us to the beach. Oh, we need to do the groceries. Let's go check out seafood place.
And
like
you know, COVID's like everybody's like, well, you know, keep our bubble small.
Yeah, I mean, like, we were trying to be careful, but you know, like. But I told my wife, I was like, look, I need to break away from you guys and go see Mark. And I'm sorry it didn't materialize, but I promise you, when I'll be there in about, after January, and we plan to stay there for a year. So I have no excuses.
Oh, right on. You're going to be down. You're going to be in South Florida for a year.
Yeah, I'll be working from there.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, Naples is like 100 miles away. It's a great afternoon to go, you know, get on the bike and go ride Alligator Alley, and pretty straight road. I don't ever go fast bike, but I'll sometimes pump it up there a little bit over the speed limit. Fun straight stretch. If you don't run into any alligators on the road. Yeah, I don't know. Amanda, do you want to tap in with anything? I mean, you've been sitting here like quietly supporting me, and
I've been listening to how the everythingness was something that
come on in a little bit here. Let's see if we can get you.
All right, cool.
In the frame.
Yeah, here I'll slide over with you. I'm
Yeah.
still with Fizzball over here.
And here, I'll even.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Hey.
So
A little bit more, because my own frame covers. Here
Yeah,
you
yeah.
are.
There you go. So we're talking about the different like ego, I guess, personalities, and how we have to kind of acknowledge or accept that there's that we're everything, you know, and having to balance that. And I think that people are overwhelmed with that idea or that notion because, you know, a lot of times, like as a woman, you know, you identify as I'm a mother, or I'm a, you know, I'm a this, or I'm a sister, I'm a this or that, or, you know, I feel like as men too, you know, I'm a father, I'm a son, you know, I'm a CEO of something or whatever, and it's hard to balance which role you're playing for the day, or which role, or in the course of the day, how many different roles you have to play, you know, to just get through the day, to just make it through. Because especially when you were talking about like the societal programming and like what we're expected to accomplish, you know, just as an individual person, it's interesting to hear, number one, that you're not alone, that there are people that discuss these types of archetypes, the behavioral archetypes thing. I would consider myself a campaigner, if you will. It's nice to break down the facets of a multifaceted person, which we all, I feel, are, you know. So it's been kind of enlightening and kind of refreshing to, you know, like you identify, like I identify with all of these archetypes, and like what do I identify most with, or which one would I find myself on, like on the top of the jar the most, or whatever. And learning how to expand yourself, to shuffle and be able to like, I would almost say, like, showcase the different parts of yourself while maintaining the balance and the focus on like the core of you, like, or, you know, like this, if you will.
Yeah.
While not losing that, because sometimes you can, you know, sometimes you can just become one role or something like that, and the next thing you know, you've lost like the inner part of yourself telling you what your compass is or something, or why it is that we're even doing what we're doing, and we're just kind of rolling with the punches. You know, kind of like that monotonous, just like expectation of just running the course of the day as this role or that role or something. So it's great, and it's insightful, you know, to kind of break that down a little bit more and kind of dissect it. As you dissect the archetypes, you get to dissect yourself, and I think self-awareness is obviously key. So yeah, it's very, it's
what I wanted to add to this, and I guess that goes along to what, Mark, we talked just a few minutes ago, is I guess the best approach that we can tackle when we talk about dealing with this different aspects of the same persona is not to be a victim of those, but to use these as tools that you actually have in your arsenal. And a lot of people, and you know, it kind of bleeds into the territory of being an actor to a certain extent. You know, I'll give you a good example. Every day, every morning, I get on the Zoom call with my coworkers. I work remotely, and I am myself with them, but I put on this clown mask to a certain extent because I like to make them laugh, because that eases up the conversation, that, you know, we miss the physical, you know, contact of sitting in the same conference room. So that compensates. So at that moment, I'm kind of, I don't know whether it's a personality per se, but it's an aspect of me,
yeah,
that I put on like a hat or a
like
tie.
yeah,
Correct. To be that individual for that moment, and then I take it off. It doesn't mean that you're like kind of two-faced, double-dealing bastard.
no,
It's a mechanics that you kind of reserve to when you deal with the different social scenarios.
sure. It's like you're just you're simply performing on a different stage. It's not you.
But at the same time, it's me. It's
Yeah.
not like I'm intentionally acting out a persona that is not me.
No.
It's a part of me that then just comes off.
Sure.
And I found it to be the best option in terms of dealing with it, because if it doesn't become your tool, it can become a weapon.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's a weapon against yourself.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I definitely feel like when you say like when we're almost performing to your guys in terms of wanting to make them laugh and all that, it's not that you're, or like for me, for example, I find that when I'm working and I'm working in a public environment where there's a lot of people, I am a introverted extrovert, if you will. At home, I am definitely not as vivacious and like in your face as I would be out in public for work, where like my role is to engage, my role is to connect and develop relationships. And how do you do that without I almost like force myself out of my introvert self and become more extrovertedly aware of that people want to connect, or whatever. But then when I get home, I feel very sometimes I feel drained, like you put all this effort or whatever. It's not, the biggest thing is like making sure that it's as authentic as you can make it.
Yeah.
Like you want to make them laugh because you understand the parameter of what your job is or what your description is. If you keep a happy ship, you keep the productivity, and then there's efficiency. And so there's a dynamic, and there's reasons behind why what you're doing, but it's not inauthentic, and it's not in a malicious way. Like I may go home and feel like exhausted and I don't want to talk to people, but that doesn't mean I don't like people, or it doesn't mean, you know what I mean? Like, doesn't mean that my performance, if you will, at my work wasn't who I am, so it's nice to see that.
That's kind of like an inverted introvert.
Yeah. Inverted introvert. Yeah. I guess. But I don't know.
You're taking yourself in a broader sense because you're doing something that you're a little uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
But then
it's kind of like that rubber band effect. Yeah. Like I know that this is like my nature, like to be a little bit more quiet, a little bit more reserved, or maybe just a little bit more private. I don't necessarily need 100 people around me to feel whatever you need to feel like good or whatever. But naturally, we all have gifts, right? And I definitely feel like one of my gifts is to be able to sometimes I am the little tiger mom, or the adventurist or the tech person, and it just depends on what environment I'm participating in and who I'm communicating with. And you kind of tend to cater to that.
You mentioned that you're feeling drained. I mean, I would imagine it's probably difficult in terms of transitioning between these two, because usually if you take it, people who are actually the other way around, they're more reserved and more contained and kind of keeping to themselves in public.
Sure.
Once they're within the familiar environment, close friends at home, they open up and become themselves. This is kind of the other way around. You're more, well, not that you're not yourself when you're outside of this scenario, but you have to put on this extra layers instead of taking them off in order to interact with people. And I also
feel like I'm expanding my capacity for dealing with other situations, right? Like, so if I'm having a conversation with you and I'm engaging with you and I'm meeting you for the first time and you want to discuss something personal, or it's your business or something, I'm taking on an extra layer that I don't normally have for myself. So now it's almost like an empathy kind of thing, if you will. So I am completely immersed in engaging with people, and sometimes almost overextending oneself, depending on how much you're opening yourself up. And sometimes it's like you can open yourself up while creating boundaries, but sometimes those boundaries don't often exist, because it's not a tangible thing. It's it's something that you're kind of creating
Right.
in your mind or around you. So
Mhm.
sometimes I find being an empathetic person and genuinely wanting to connect with people, the draining part has a lot to do with me feeling like I'm like releasing my energy, almost like I need a recharge. You know what I mean? Like when I go home, I need to recharge. It doesn't necessarily mean I need to be by myself or anything like that. It just means that I need to be surrounded by people who are allowing me to take their energy rather than me constantly giving out the energy.
Well, I was about to mention it. I guess maybe it's a subject for a different call too. About the aspect of energy preservation. I mean, a lot of people drain us, and it not in necessarily. Well, I guess it's you can call it supernatural or spiritual. I believe there's a lot of simple social cues in the whole aspect of how people actually can involuntarily, completely or voluntarily, some people just being parasites.
Yeah,
But
there's
when you
symbiosis
describe
here
that you
today.
drained, how to, when you open up or when you actually become more vulnerable by putting on some different aspects of personality or expressing them, how to protect yourself from being victimized by people who actually can. Because I'll be honest with you, I'm trying to look at things through this skeptic glasses a lot of times, and I did not believe in these things until I kind of witnessed them. That it happens. People can be both batteries and things that drain them.
Yeah.
It happens. So I'm sorry, guys. I have to jump off.
Hey, it was great.
Yes.
It was really great to meet you. And,
Very good to meet you too. And finally, Mark, we got to talk.
Yeah.
I hope when between now and then we get to have calls like this. And
yeah, we're gonna hook up in the new
we
year.
look forward to see you in person.
Yeah. Love you, man. Thank you so
All
much.
right, love you
happy
too, guys.
holidays. Thank you.
Bye.
Talk to you later.
All right, so then leaves just these two people over here.
Yeah, just you and I. I guess we're gonna
Well,
wrap
we
it
have
up.
we have well, and I think we have who else do we have? We have Jim Monk.
Oh yeah, hey.
A couple people.
Jim's a kid from my childhood. We used to ride bikes everywhere, off into the woods for miles and build forts and stuff.
So I'll relate to you who came in. We had Yolande Lucille.
Yeah, my aunt, my godmother.
Awesome. We had Holmes Douglas.
A great guy from Denver. Yeah.
Lillian Bradley.
That's Mom.
Awesome.
Hi, Mom.
Patrick Thomas was watching. I don't know if he's still watching. Janet Parent.
Yeah, Jan. She's what a woman.
Adam Kuller.
She married a guy crazier than I am.
Oh,
so
man. Well, good luck with that. Adam Kuller.
Yeah, Adam.
And Our Creative Living was watching.
Oh yeah, wonderful.
Mm-hmm. And then we had Terry St. Amer.
Awesome. Terry's a great guy.
And Patrick S. Vida.
Yeah.
Steve Scallion.
Steve.
Rhonda Cassidy.
Rhonda is another one from my hometown in Northern Ontario. Yeah.
Awesome. Abraham.
Hey, Abe. How you doing, man?
Yeah. Barb.
Abe's one of the guys who kind of like functions in the hospital setting as this just like everything guy.
So, okay, cool. Like the jack of all trades guy.
Yeah, he's a lead tech and a very, very empathetic and sensible administrator. You don't run across those too often.
Yeah. It's kind of like an oxymoron, right? Barbara Gall.
Yeah, my sister. She's married to another one of my cousins. I think of some of my cousins as brothers and sisters because I was an only child. So.
Me too. So I have I mean, I have hundreds of cousins, but I have a core, maybe 10 cousins, and I grew up with them. I even lived with them when I was like 5 or 6. So, Ed
is another guy from childhood.
Awesome. We have Jeanette Tejeda.
Oh, wonderful nurse I used to work with.
And Paul Allen.
And Paul's a great guy. Yeah, married to one of my cousins.
Awesome. Jim Monk.
Yeah.
And Wild Oaks is watching now.
Wild Oaks. Oh man, awesome.
So
yeah. There's so many guys out there that are into different aspects of my life where I've found these people and maybe compartmentalize them a little bit, and some of them don't know each other. And I think that's what you do as a multiple or chameleon personality, is you kind of keep, okay, these are my sporty people, and these are my serious people, and these are my
the hippies, or
yeah. It's all but yeah, what a great group that came out and tapped in there. I guess we wrap it up. We just is there anything else that you're thinking? I loved that 10-15 minutes that you just talked there. Man, that was great.
Good. That was hard to do on the spot, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, but you mirrored, or you reflected a lot of what I was saying, and maybe some of the points that I wasn't covering very well. And to see you and Jeff Fizbo is the way I call it, is to see you guys connect and get what was going on.
Yeah, it was an insightful night. So I guess the only thing left is someone's giving you hearts. Thank you for the love. I guess maybe just tell your fans or your audience when you're doing the next one.
Maybe in another week or something like that. It's Wednesday. Is it Thursday or Wednesday?
Today's Thursday. Yeah.
So we shouldn't do them on Thursday nights anymore, because my other group meets on Thursday nights.
Okay.
Maybe Wednesdays, maybe hump day. But I don't know. I'm the thing with me is there's days where I'm just wiped out, right? Like I'm just not really functional. So
understood.
But I'll shoot for the middle of the week, trying to do something like this every week, see if we can get more people out. And it's been great. Thanks for taking all this time with us. I mean, sticking it out with me for 30-40 minutes on some of my YouTube talks. I'm looking at people. I'm like, did you make it to the end of that? And tonight we went 2 hours, so covered a pretty good bit of ground. But yeah, it's a long one, and I appreciate you guys being out here with us. So we'll sign off.
Bye guys. Bye. Bye everywhere.
How do you turn this thing off? End.
End meeting for all.